In this video, we'll show you some amazing maps of Africa and the Sahara that will blow your mind. Because in fact, what these ancient records present is simply impossible. What's more, as you'll see at the end of the video, the insights derived from them are of revolutionary historical significance. Are you ready to join us in uncovering one of the most exciting historical mysteries of all time? Then sit back, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and be sure to stay tuned until the end. The Green Desert. Covering an incredible 9.2 million square kilometers, the Sahara Desert advances to become the largest arid desert on Earth. While the colossal wasteland stretches from Africa's Atlantic coast to the Red Sea coast, in theory, Germany would fit 26 times inside the Sahara. And while the famous sand dune desert is only in fact 20% of the Sahara, one thing is indisputable. This region could not be more drastically different from a lush, sprouting forest landscape. And yet, in the meantime, it is considered certain that the Sahara did not always have the dust-dry face that it presents to us today. In the course of the last 200,000 years, the desert blossomed at least 3 times, and that over periods of several millennia. According to this, the last dry phase of the Sahara set in between the years 4000 and 3500 BC, with the spreading arm of the desert forcing life to flee to the south, or rather, to the fertile Nile Valley. So far, so well known. But if the Sahara's last green phase was more than 5,500 years ago, how can the following map from the mid-16th century be explained? Made by researcher Sebastian Münster, the document shows us a series of rivers and lakes, and even a dense forest the size of the U.S. state of Texas located in the middle of the Sahara. But how is this even possible? After all, Sebastian Münster was considered one of the most important cartographers of the 16th century, literally putting not only Africa, but also Europe, South America, and Asia on the map. So what motivated Münster to endow the arid desert with a flourishing flora? Well, to understand this, we need to crawl down the proverbial rabbit hole and take a look at the rest of the oldest maps of Africa. The surprising thing, Münster was by no means alone in his depiction. For example, many other maps from that time also show us a Sahara that is bursting with water and numerous cities. No matter whether we look at the map created by Leonhard Holle in 1482 or the so-called Catalan World Atlas from 1375, everywhere we see structures and details that, according to official historiography, should not actually exist. Enigmatic Parallels. If we look beyond the countless settlements in the Sahara and search for an even larger context, we come across Fra Mauro's world map from 1459. In detail, this depiction shows us the so-called Old World with Europe, Africa, and Asia. And here too, the Sahara seems more like a coherent metropolis than a largely uninhabited desert. In our days, we often tend to look down on our ancestors from above. Thus, far from showing us the edifices of unknown civilizations, maps reveal the fact that people of the past had no idea about the world. But is this really the answer? Can we make it that simple? Let's just assume at this point that maps reflect reality. What then became of the mysterious desert cities and their inhabitants? And why did the natural force of the Sahara undergo dramatic change? Particularly striking is the fact that the centuries-old maps apparently exist in rough quantities. For example, the branching river network crept onto Gerardus Mercator's map of 1578, as well as onto the depiction created by Fernando Bertelli 13 years earlier. And at the latest, when we look at Martin Waldseemüller's map from 1507, we cannot help but recognize a clear pattern. Mega-Chad. But do the maps possibly not show us what the Sahara looked like at the time they were made? It is conceivable that the depictions refer to significantly older epochs, when the Sahara actually still embodied a flourishing paradise. What is certain is that the depictions of the landscape appear fundamentally correct. Well, at least if we backdate them a few thousand years. As of today, Africa once housed one of the largest lakes in the history of the Earth. In detail, 55,000 years ago, the Mega-Chad had an extension of no less than 1.95 million square kilometers. A small classification The currently largest lake of the Earth, the Caspian Sea, is about 5 times smaller. 6,000 years ago, the Megachad still covered an area of 360,000 square kilometers with a maximum depth of 170 meters. With this knowledge in mind, an incredible detail reveals itself. Aren't the maps of Fernando Bertelli and Leonard Holle adorned with large lakes that are strikingly reminiscent of the depictions of Megachad? What's more, the Megachad was merely the largest of a total of 4 large lakes that once lay in the Sahara. And isn't that exactly what Bertelli's map shows us? And isn't it also amazing that a modern scientific study has confirmed the former existence of rivers that connected the great bodies of water? The search for the origin. So how should we classify the old maps now? Well, there are 2 possibilities. Either the Sahara 500 years ago still housed an extensive network of rivers and cities, or the representations are based on a previous knowledge that was passed down over millennia. In fact, the Greek polymath Claudius Ptolemy produced a map of the Sahara around 150 AD that shows the corresponding network of rivers. So did the rivers still exist 2,000 years ago? Or did Ptolemy fall back on much older sources? We remember, the last green phase of the Sahara ended between the years of 4000 and 3500 before Christ. The blossoming of the desert, in turn, had begun around the year 14,000 BC in West Africa, while it spread eastward in the following millennia. According to our official knowledge, the paths of our ancestors were closely linked to climatic changes. In the 6th millennium BC, hunter-gatherers in the Sahara finally began farming. And yet the corresponding records come with a major limitation. A full-blown urban culture, as the maps show us, is not attested in this area. However, we know researchers are always only as smart as the current state of discoveries allows. What is categorically ruled out today becomes reality tomorrow through a new discovery. As if all the maps and their unexplained backgrounds weren't confusing enough, what we're about to show you will definitely knock your socks off. Sebastian Münster's map reveals something that simply shouldn't exist. Impossible knowledge. Let's direct our attention away from the rivers, lakes, and forests for a moment. Instead, let's let our gaze wander to the west of the Siberia, more specifically to a structure that coincides with the geographic location of Gilbert Rishat, commonly better known as the Eye of the Sahara. We are dealing with a gigantic structure that continues to give researchers major headaches to this day. While the enormous structure is composed of a series of concentric ring walls, it has a diameter of 45 kilometers. It can even be detected from space. The only problem that accompanies the Eye of the Sahara is that we have no idea what its background is. In this regard, theories of meteorite impacts, volcanic activity, and erosion are regularly put forward and thrown out again. The most exciting and controversial assumption is that it is not a natural formation at all. No, in truth, some persons are of a rock-solid conviction that the Eye of the Sahara embodies the legendary ruins of Atlantis. But be that as it may, it is certain that the old maps show us the structure when it is covered by water. At this point, it becomes particularly exciting. The modern scientific studies show us that indeed once an enormous river flowed from the Atlantis Mountains into the Atlantic Ocean, passing the Eye of the Sahara. In detail, the river existed from about 11,700 to 5,000 years ago. If we now also remember that another study showed that aquatic life once lived in the Eye of the Sahara 7,700 years ago, a groundbreaking conclusion emerges. The maps reflect an ancient knowledge that goes back several millennia. But how can it be that just that knowledge was passed on over the centuries and then disappeared simply so in the sinking of the past? After all, the knowledge we have today about the history of the Sahara is by no means based on historical records, but on modern scientific analyses. And above all, who passed on the knowledge? Was there once an advanced civilization on our planet that we know nothing about today? What happened to all the rivers, lakes, forests, and cities of the Sahara? And what the hell is a Cyclops-like giant doing on Sebastian Münster's map? And with that, thanks for watching. Feel free to leave us a thumbs up and a subscription to support us for free and stay up to date at the same time. Before you take a look at the other videos in the credits, we'd like your opinion. How do you think we should interpret the cards? Are we simply dealing with distorted misrepresentations? Or do the maps lead us to a much greater historical truth? We are looking forward to your comments. And with that, we say ciao and see you next time.